Okay, guys, today we're going to do day 3 of our World War II lecture notes. You've completed day 1 and day 2, which is about the build-up to World War II, including the events that took place in the 1920s and 30s with the rise of the dictators, the timeline events that happened throughout the 1930s that caused World War II to begin. But just a couple of basics to remind you about. First off, remember, the war itself begins after a long buildup of aggressive actions by Germany, Italy, and Japan, who collectively made up an alliance called the Axis Powers. And the war technically begins on September 1st, 1939, when Adolf Hitler invades the region here of Poland, which Britain and France had vowed to protect. And once he does invade, that signals the beginning of World War II. And that's where we're going to pick up at today. Now, it's also important to remember that when we talk about World War II, there's really two separate wars, what we call theaters of war. There's the war in Europe, which is going to be the war that takes place over here in Europe and across North Africa. But there's also going to be a whole other version of the war, a whole other part of the war that's taking place in the Pacific, which is going to be the war that is fought between the Allies and Japan on that side of the world. We'll do that as a whole separate side. So today we're just going to focus on the war in Europe, okay? Now remember, as you do your notes, you are going to be required to fill in the missing information on your outline, which is in red, and you're going to highlight the information on your notes outline that is in blue on my PowerPoint, okay? I'm going to go pretty quickly through this, so if you do need to go back, if you miss anything, you can go ahead and open up the PowerPoint itself or the PDF of the PowerPoint, which is posted on our Schoology page. You can complete it that way. So here we go. So World War II in Europe, right? World War II in Europe actually is going to take place much differently than we had seen during World War I, because by the time World War II begins, we've had a significant advancement in technology in that 20-year period, especially in aircraft, meaning in the use of airplanes and bombers. So what ends up taking place is Hitler, when he begins his war, when he invades Poland, he is going to use his air force, what is known as the Luftwaffe, and his new improved version of the tanks called the Panzer, to very rapidly dominate the mainland of Europe in the initial few years of the war. We call the initial phases. So the war begins September 1st, 1939, and basically within a 2-year period, Adolf Hitler has overrun much of the mainland of Europe itself. Now, he does this using a new strategy called the Blitzkrieg. Now, Blitzkrieg translates from German into English as essentially means lightning war. And just like lightning, it means, lightning strikes very hard, without warning, and it basically destroys anything that it touches. And that's what Hitler's idea was with the Blitzkrieg, right? As we've talked about in class, Hitler was a veteran of World War I in the trenches, and he understood that if you try and fight a traditional style of war with the new weapons, you are going to get bogged down into trench warfare. So he developed this Blitzkrieg approach, which is actually a 3-step approach, which he's going to use to successfully overrun huge areas of land. So step 1 in the Blitzkrieg is to use the Luftwaffe, or the Air Force, to bomb the region you're going to invade and drop massive amounts of bombs on them. Step 2, immediately following the end of the bombing, is to send in the tanks, which these are very fast-moving tanks, these Panzer divisions, which can just blast through any enemy lines protecting borders. And once you've blasted through the lines of the enemies with your tanks, you then send in the ground troops, step 3, and you mop up and clean up and take hold of any area of land that you've taken over, that you've managed to control. And using this Blitzkrieg 3-step approach, Adolf Hitler is able to very quickly overrun massive amounts of land across Europe with very little resistance by the countries he invades. Okay, and you can just see some images here of the German Luftwaffe bombing, the, huge numbers of tanks that would invade, and then followed in by the ground troops that would take control of the area. So basically, using the Blitzkrieg, Germany is able to quickly overrun the countries of Poland and Denmark and the Netherlands and Luxembourg and Belgium, all within 6 weeks of the war beginning. And basically what's going to happen is Hitler is going to turn his attention to invading France. And by June of 1940, we're talking less than 8 months after the war began, Adolf Hitler has also taken over France. And what's going to happen in France is that there's really going to be 2 separate parts of France. This area here in this reddish and purple is all what is now the modern-day country of France. The northern half, this red-orange area, is going to be an occupied zone, meaning the German military is going to control it. And down here in the southern half, they're going to create what's called a puppet government, meaning a government centered out of Vichy, is the name of the town, or the capital, that the German government is going to control what happens. So now France is fallen under. And essentially what we see is France is going to try to fight on through an underground resistance and these units of underground fighters that avoid capture before it falls. But in the end, by 1941, Adolf Hitler has advanced and taken over most of mainland Europe, at least those who were his enemies in mainland Europe. In fact, when we talk about it, in less than a year, the Axis, meaning Germany and Italy, had extensive control over the mainland of Europe. So if we look at this map here of Europe, Germany is a country in red, Italy's down here in red. These were the two Axis powers along with Japan on the other side of the world. Well, within 1 year of the war, they have taken over all these red areas of land across Europe. Now, the one major remaining enemy of Adolf Hitler in Europe, because remember, at this time, we got to think back, Russia and Germany still had a non-aggression pact, meaning Russia and Germany were not at war. Russia was controlling this part of the world here in Eastern Europe. Germany was controlling everything west of there. So the one remaining enemy was the United Kingdom or Great Britain. And Adolf Hitler is going to turn his attention in August of 1940 to an invasion of Britain. This is the last standing Axis power that exists, or non-Axis power, allied power against him. So Adolf Hitler understands history. He knows that he's not going to be able to invade the island of Britain. Very difficult to do. So instead he decides he's going to attempt to take it over with a bombing campaign. So the strategy was to bomb Britain consistently over and over with the Luftwaffe, his air force, over and over, not targeting military targets, but cities and civilians, until eventually the British people and the British government surrender. He has complete disregard for the lives of young men, women, children, elderly. It's just an attack on Britain very indiscriminately. It becomes known as the Battle of Britain. And effectively, though, it's going to be Adolf Hitler's first defeat, because the British people, the British government, and most importantly, the British Royal Air Force, the RAF, do not give up, and they refuse to surrender, even though daily and nightly they are being bombed and killed by the thousands and thousands and thousands during Adolf Hitler's bombing campaign. This is a very famous moment in British history as the people band together and refuse to give in. In fact, you've maybe seen versions of this sign, "Keep calm and carry on." That was the rallying cry of the British people during this period of the Battle of Britain as they're being bombed constantly. But, people would take shelter in the evenings or at night when the bombings occurred down in the subway tunnels or in basements. But oftentimes, they were unsuccessful and many, many, many tens of thousands of people across Britain get killed. One key thing that allowed them to defeat the German, though, during this was that the British had developed a new technology that could allow them to see the German Air Force coming before they arrived, and that would be radar. So using radar, they could sense, or they could actually see when the German military or the Air Force was coming, and they would be able to get their Royal Air Force up in the skies beforehand and be able to engage them and shoot down the German planes, or at least try to, before they got to the cities they were attacking. So the Battle of Britain becomes sort of this key turning point in World War II as it's Adolf Hitler's first defeat. After that, though, after being unsuccessful in attacking and taking over Britain, Adolf Hitler is going to break his non-aggression pact with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union, and in June of 1941, what becomes known as Operation Barbarossa, Hitler is going to turn his attention east and invade the Soviet Union using the Blitz campaign. He unleashes the Blitzkrieg on the USSR, the Soviet Union, and he's expecting a complete and quick collapse of the USSR. However, even though the initial invasion was successful, the Soviet Union joins the Allies, and they're able to slow the advance of the Germans. However, another part of the Holocaust is going to happen during this period as German units begin attacking and slaughtering Soviet Jewish people and communists that they capture during this invasion of the Soviet Union, or of what we call Russia oftentimes. So as a side note, the same year that Adolf Hitler invades the Soviet Union in 1941, later on that year, December of 1941, that is when the Japanese attack the United States at Pearl Harbor, and the United States officially joins the war on the side of the Allies. Now, we're going to bring them up again a lot more when we learn about the Pacific side of the war, but it is important to note that in 1941, Hitler attacks the Soviet Union, and the United States is going to begin engaging in the war itself, mainly in 1942, though, because the attack happens in December of 1941. So this Operation Barbarossa, the attempted invasion of the Soviet Union, At first, it is very successful. You can see on this map here, Hitler's forces are able to push way into the Soviet Union, nearly capture Leningrad, Moscow, and then, most importantly, down here, Stalin's namesake city, Stalingrad. So in December of 1941, the tide turns. This is when the counteroffensive is launched, meaning the Soviet Union gathers near Stalingrad their forces, and they launch a counteroffensive against the Germans. And this is going to be successful because Hitler made a huge mistake. He invaded Russia during the winter, or in the fall, and fall became winter, and the Germans were not prepared for winter warfare. They weren't adequately supplied, or clothed, or just in general prepared for the harsh Russian winter. And on top of that, the Soviet Union's army had been using what's called scorched earth policy. So as they retreated away from the advancing Nazi army, they burned everything. They burned every building, they burned every village, they destroyed every field, and there was nothing left for the Nazi army to use for shelter or food, and that's going to deprive them. And this is going to lead to one of the most harsh battles of all of World War II, which is going to become the Battle of Stalingrad. This is the last German offensive and the counteroffensive by the Soviet Union that takes place down here near the city of Stalingrad. It's actually going to be one of the most brutal battles of all of World War II. It's going to last several months, but in the end, the Soviet Union is going to be successful in stopping the German advance, or the Nazi advance, into the USSR, and they're going to begin retreating. So when you put that together with the Soviet success in stopping the Nazi advance into the Soviet Union and the United States' entrance into the war in 1941, this is going to begin turning the tide of the war against the Nazis and the Italians back in favor of the Allies. So the Allied successes are going to begin, again, with the United States' entrance and the Soviet success, and they're going to begin pushing the Axis powers back. The British and American troops are going to first attack the Germans rather than in mainland Europe itself. They're going to attack them in northern Africa. North Africa at this time had fallen under the control of Nazi and Italian forces, and so in 1942, British and American forces invade and begin defeating the Germans across North Africa, and they're going to use that as a springboard to attack across the Mediterranean into the mainland of Italy itself right here. So in 1943, they invade Italy, and through, a long drawn-out battle. This doesn't take place overnight. This includes lots of, millions of men being killed on battlefields, lots of battles taking place. But in 1943, they invade and successfully take back Italy, and Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy, is actually overthrown by his own people who have had enough of his rule. But Hitler is able to help Mussolini escape and then reestablish control over parts of northern Italy. However, by this time, a lot of Italians are no longer supportive of the ideas of fascism and of Hitler, and therefore we're going to begin seeing them fight back against Hitler and Mussolini. And by 1944, beginning 1944, Italy has surrendered and is no longer fighting alongside the Nazis. So now that that's taken place, now the big offensive is going to occur. The Allies launched the biggest invasion in all of world history, what becomes known as D-Day, in June of 1944, and D-Day is the nickname given to the invasion of mainland Europe. You got to remember, most of mainland Europe at the time was controlled and under the power of the Nazis. So for many, many months, the Allies, particularly the US, the French, and the British, Canadians, trained in England or in Britain for the eventual invasion. And on June 6, 1944, they invade an area of France known as Normandy. And the invasion was huge. It was the largest invasion in history. 150,000 men land on the beaches of France in the initial wave, with tens of thousands of tanks and armored vehicles. And by the end of June, within 3 or 4 weeks, over nearly 1 million Allied soldiers have landed on the beaches of France, are beginning to fight their way through France to push the Nazis back towards Germany. You also have paratroopers jumping in or dropping in behind the enemy lines. And basically, it took less than a year before the Allies are able to liberate or free France from control of the Nazis. So that's the beginning of the mainland European war during World War II. The Germans do launch one final counteroffensive. It becomes known as the Battle of the Bulge. It's a very large battle that takes place over about a month or so in a very cold, cold winter between the months of December through Christmas and into January of 1944 and 1945. It takes place in a region called the Ardennes Forest of Belgium, And the reason called the Battle of the Bulge is Hitler concentrated all of his forces in one region and attacked the Allied line, bulging it way back, but they never essentially break, and the Allies are able to hold off this counteroffensive and push the Nazis back. And basically, the Battle of the Bulge, even though it's some of the harshest and coldest winter fighting in recorded history, it does not succeed for the Nazis. So this is where we're going to begin seeing the end of the war coming about. So, D-Day is something you could spend, days and days and day after day in class learning about. We don't need to know all the specific details, but D-Day is the nickname given. It was technically called Operation Overlord. It was the name given to the Allied invasion of mainland France, which, remember, was under the control of the Nazis, in order to begin taking that land back from Nazi control. Largest invasion in world history, largest attack ever at that point. So basically the Allies are now on their way to victory, because if we look at this European map here, right, the Nazis and Italians have basically controlled an area that encircled all of where I'm circling on your map right now in 1941. But first we have the Soviets over here begin pushing from the east back towards mainland Germany itself. Okay. After the Battle of Stalingrad, we have the invasion of Italy, so you got Allies coming up from the south as well. And lastly, the invasion of France here. Here's where Normandy is at. This is going to create the third prong. So you can see that the Allies are pushing in the German Nazi army from all directions back towards the mainland of Germany itself in a slow but steady regaining of land. So by April of 1945, the Allies had Germany surrounded, basically back into the region of Germany itself, and the capital of Berlin is invaded by the Red Army of the Soviet Union in late April. And just a few days after that, on May 8th, 1945, the Nazi army surrenders, and that day is now called VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. May 8th, 1945, that is the date of the official end of the war in Europe, as the remaining Nazi army surrenders to the Allies. Very famously on that day, here's Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain at the time, threw up to a huge crowd of hundreds of thousands of cheering English people or British people, threw up the V sign for victory. And it's kind of become part of common culture now that when people see that sign there, we don't think victory, we think peace, because the victory brought about the peace after World War II. But it is important to note that even though the war with Germany and Italy does come to an end in May of 1945, there is still an entire separate war going on against the Japanese that is going to take 3 months longer to complete. So we'll learn about that in a separate set of notes. Now the last thing here is Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, how they both die at the end of the war. Mussolini was captured by his own Italian population about 2 weeks before the end of the war itself, and he was hung, beaten, and stoned, and then shot in the streets of Italy, along with his mistress. And they were, the bodies were displayed for people to basically take their anger out on. You can see them hanging here, and that's what Benito Mussolini looked like in the end. And of course, Adolf Hitler meets his death as the Red Army, the Soviet army, is closing in. Adolf Hitler and his mistress, Eva Braun, who he allegedly marries the day or two before this, go into an underground bunker beneath Berlin, and reportedly kills himself on April 29th. And his body is discovered by Soviet soldiers badly burned. And that is the death of Adolf Hitler, although there's conspiracy theories that perhaps he was not dead because the Soviets might have covered it up. But there is no proof of that, so basically Mussolini is killed by the Italian people, and Adolf Hitler commits suicide at the end of the war. Okay, in the next set of notes, we'll talk about the war in the Pacific against the Japanese, and although that was not a very detailed set of notes, that is just a quick overview of the World War II in Europe. We'll learn more about that through different activities we do in class.